there. Happy Monday. Oh, is that ever happy? Welcome to Cannabis Chat Live. I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media, and every week I am joined on Mondays for Medicinal Mondays, and I'm joined by my friend Alyssa Merrill from flowerandtonic.com. Hello, Alyssa Merrill.
Hello, Jimmy. How are you?
I'm good. It's Monday, and I understand why everybody likes Fridays and doesn't like Mondays. You know what I'm saying?
So actually, I'm not loving Fridays lately. I'm not.
Oh, why is that?
I'm depressed. I'm just finding them a little depressing. What are we going to do this weekend? What movie are we going to watch? I don't know.
That's right. Oh, look, I don't have three girls under the age of 13, okay, as far as kids go. So I could totally relate to that. You know how much respect I have for parents of young children during this COVID nightmare that we've all been undergoing for the last, it feels like 10 years, not 10 months.
I know. It's weird though. I think with kids, what's different is like you open the door to things. So like I want to let them go to a holiday type of event, but the second I open the door to activities and like what's going on, then they're just going to keep asking for more and more, So it's tough, I think with young kids to have a firm line because there's so little right now that's promised to them that it's easier to just have like a solid divide. So I've been talking to a lot of parents about that who are struggling with the same thing.
Look, and I think that's so important. Parents seeking out other parents of young children, specifically their same age, because you all have to go through this, and becoming the activity organizer, the chef, making plans. I mean, this generation doesn't know how to make plans.
There's been a lot of roadblocks, like a lot. It's obsessive and a lot of TikTok, but yeah, it is what it is. I think there should be though. I think we all feel a need to vent, and I don't feel entitled. Like I feel bad. I don't really have a lot to complain about. I've got a warm house. I've got plenty of space. Like I know in the big picture of it, I'm so blessed and fortunate compared to so many other people. But yet I still think like we need a way to vent, if that makes sense. We're not supposed to, and I feel bad doing it, but I want to.
No, you know what, whatever it takes to maintain your mental sanity during this time, I'm pretty sure every doctor would encourage that. If that includes sharing your feelings and expressing gratitude. I remember somebody taught me about expressing gratitude.
Yes. Yes.
So,
and I swear the best feeling is that you can give or get is, I don't know, we're in line at like Dunkin' or McDonald's, person back of us purchases and we purchase. It's just like it's just so little, but those little things seem to help.
Little shares of old normalcy, right? But we used to take for granted have changed. Well, we've got a great show. As usual, Alyssa, Medicinal Mondays opens up a wide variety of experts from the medical field, from the research field, from all sorts of different backgrounds, to creating some really good guests, some good interviews, some information for our viewers. And we have three outstanding ones today. One in particular I'm extremely giddy about, but that's because I know who that is. I don't know who the other two are, but I will talk to you. I will mention that I believe both of the first guests that we have, one at the bottom of this half hour and then another at the top. I think we're starting with, are we starting with Nikki?
Starting with Nikki, yes.
Nikki Haley, right? Nikki Lawley, excuse me.
Nikki Lawley, yep.
Lawley.
I was introduced to her recently, like directly. We've been connected professionally for a while, but she's suffered a brain injury and as a nurse has overcome a lot of obstacles using cannabis, and just her passion comes through her I'm all about authenticity. She works with some amazing clinicians and she's awesome. I'm thrilled to have her on the show. And then we're going to be speaking with Brittany from Tonic Vibes. Yes.
Now, is it Brittany Carbone or Brittany Carboni?
I don't know. Know.
We'll find out before she gets into our live room. We'll ask her during the waiting room segment when no one else can hear us. But I'm going out on a limb thinking it's Carboni since I know some Carbonis in the past, so I'm hoping it's spelled the same and looks the same.
Oh, do you know the restaurant that closed near us? The Carboni restaurant? No.
No, I don't
Upper
think I do,
All right.
but I know
But,
it
but
is
I
what
go
it is.
pretty far back with Tiffany. Why do I always want to call her Tiffany? I don't know why. It's weird. Brittany. And she's been at this for, I mean, talk about high standards. I remember when I spoke to her a few years ago and I'd tested a product and it wasn't exactly, like what it said it was. It said it was an isolate versus a broad spectrum, which it basically means like isolate's 1, broad spectrum is like usually 2 or 3, and then there's full spectrum, which is 4 or 5. So
4 or 5 plants?
Cannabinoids, excuse me.
Cannabinoids.
Well,
Thank you.
yes, spectrum
Thank you.
isolates. Excuse me, sorry.
That's
And
all right. You
it
certainly
just
don't. Please do not assume that I understand that.
and I know, and you need to remind me. I know, right? So, so it turns out, so she was sold, the wrong oil. Like she was buying the oil, like so many brands do, and there are a lot of brokers in the middle of the whole situation when it comes to making these products. And I asked her about it, and she then started growing all of her own flower because this has been a frustration of hers where she just couldn't depend on people to actually do what they said they were going to do or deliver what they promised. So she's, highest standards all around. I think someone like sings to her plants. Her products are amazing. And yeah, I'm excited to introduce you.
Well, and then I do want to go back to that little educational component that we threw in there. Take me from full spectrum CBD, which I believe, what did you say, 4 or 5 cannabinoids?
Full spectrum can be, it could be more terpenes, cannabinoids. It could be many. No, I'm wondering, that's actually a good question. I need to ask maybe I'll ask over at MCR. I wonder
how many cannabinoids in a full spectrum plant?
A lot. Let's say a lot. And then there's broad spectrum is like 3. We should ask Tiffany. Broad spectrum is like 3 or 4 typically, and then there's isolate, which is 1. Like 1 molecule.
And these are all cannabinoids. These are all the chemicals inside the cannabis sativa, the female cannabis sativa plant.
Correct.
Yes?
Correct. Well, it
is
could
it
also
the male
be found,
one?
It can also be found within the hemp plant. A molecule is a molecule, whether it's found in the cannabis marijuana plant or the cannabis hemp plant.
Gotcha.
CBD is CBD, but what it's grown with is considered the entourage effect. The entourage is the full spectrum. And then if you cut that down from the full spectrum to here, you've got the broad spectrum. So again, 3 or 4. And then you've got the single isolate. And the single isolate is what doctors know. Like they know 1 single molecule. For example, like most people know of Prilosec, right? So after Prilosec came Nexium because they're always trying to trim it down to that very, very singular molecule. Right. And it's probably why, we're in the situation we're in where it's hard for doctors to stand by these products because it's everything that they don't understand, like, again, like they're all about 1 molecule or we're like, throw in the whole plant. So, I mean, there's definitely different ways of looking at it. I see the more ingredients, the more risk of side effects or allergic reactions or adverse reactions. If you know something's going to work, you would, do no harm, like least amount of medicine for the best, results is the goal. Right. So yeah, this is like an issue. So I'm sure Tiffany, I'll always call her Tiffany. I'm sure Brittany can speak to it further, but it's like a big debate. That's been in the news a lot lately. What's better, isolate, full spectrum? And there will never be an answer that.
Well, it's going to be what's better for you, right? Because everyone's going to have a different reaction to it based on their own endocannabinoid and metabolism and all that stuff that's inside of us.
Correct. But like there are so many combinations. So then like, let's say we decide, okay, I like THC, CBD, and a terpene, citrus.
Myrcene. Yeah. Okay.
So say I like those three, but then I can also like merge the combinations and I can do 50% THC, 20, you know what I mean? Like you can flip around the ratios. I
Do you
think,
go ahead?
no,
Go ahead.
no, I think that's what makes the best product is like figuring out that perfect ratio. And that's what Tiffany has done really well. She mixes ashwagandha. So then, and then you take out the other. So really in cannabis, like at the dispensaries, it's cannabinoids. But when you go into the CBD hemp space and you start mixing the cannabinoids with ashwagandha or licorice oil, like what, all these different things, that's when I think some really cool stuff. Um,
Interesting.
yeah, like that's what I think makes a really good product, the ratio and what it's combined with.
And speaking of ratios, I know I think you have the same poster that Ruth Fisher sent me with that ratio set up, the THC and CBD, right?
Yeah.
It's too bad. I wish I could
I'm
have
sure
sent it. I know you can hold it up, or if you want. Yeah, go ahead, hold it up. What
This
the
is
hell?
like a very
Should I have sent it to our director beforehand? Yeah, probably, but
really, it is really.
You can't see it, but we get it.
Just kidding. I know.
Yeah.
Can we can post it right through.
Well, when I send it to Dan, our director, in advance, he could have punched it up at any time. But did I do that?
Well,
No. But now
it's
that
better to keep people waiting for something good to enter their
I think in the future we will show that, because I do find it fascinating when you look at 2-to-1, 4-to-1, 10-to-1, and I'm talking about CBD to THC and the different strains that have that and the different medical diagnoses that Ruth Fisher has found can impact that with that proper ratio dosing, I guess, if you will.
Yeah.
So it was kind of neat. And that's all from the Ruth Fisher's Medical Cannabis Primer that's out there. And you can get it on Amazon if you want. And in fact, if anybody's interested in hearing from the author, Ruth Fisher, we posted the excerpt from that interview that we did with Ruth Fisher today on the Pro Cannabis Media LinkedIn page. So if you go to the Pro Cannabis Media LinkedIn page, you, of course, can listen to that interview and perhaps get enlightened on what Alyssa and I are talking about as far as Ruth Fisher goes. I do want to throw, what's that?
I have to just say one more thing. Talk about enlightened. I've spoken to her since we spoke to her and wow, like we have to have her back. She's got some amazing experience and some amazing, a book about what came first, the chicken or the egg, like some really cool stuff. Like I'm just such a fan. So, and she introduced me to Nikki. So I like where this conversation is going.
Good. And we will talk to Nikki in just about 15 minutes or so. A few quick little news items that I picked up. And I like to do this because this is a live show. And because the cannabis community and cannabis news happens all the time now, we're almost it's a 24-hour news cycle for sure. The cannabis space, it tends to be a little more laid back. A lot of times things will happen a week ago, they get reported a week later. As you know, that's cannabis time, I guess. But seriously, New Jersey, there was a little controversy. The voters voted it in big time. They want adult use, recreational, legal cannabis. And everybody was excited about it. And then, of course, it goes to the legislature where they're going to implement the laws and the structures and how it's all going to work. And there was all sorts of problems inside that legislature. Of course there was. They finally now have come to an agreement, and it does look like that this bill will be signed into law by Governor Phil Murphy on December 17th. Up to 37 cultivation licenses will be issued during the first 2 years of this adult use program. 70% of the sales tax revenue, as well as revenue from a grower tax, will be committed to programs aiding communities and individuals disproportionately affected by the failed war on drugs. And those programs will include mentoring, legal aid, and healthcare. And of course, it was delayed a little bit, but check this out. Marijuana Business Daily projects the annual recreational cannabis sales in New Jersey should reach up to, I wish I had a drum roll, right? $950 million by 2024.
What compared to Do you know?
Massachusetts just did, I think we just passed 1 billion after 2 years.
Oh,
So it
so
gives you an idea. They're basically going to get close to 1 billion in their first or second year. Again, that's 4 years from now. It took Massachusetts 2 years just to get to that starting line after question 4 passed. So again, it's not going to happen next year. It's probably not going to happen the year after that. But by 2024, it'll be a vibrant industry. And that is just the recreational use and sales, which is
yeah.
incredible to me, because
Well,
we talk a lot about the medicine, cannabinoid medicine, and that's really what we like to focus on. But we're not going to deny the fact that we know that there are people out there who enjoy recreating with the cannabis plant as well, right, Alyssa?
I know some people who do. Yes, I
Yeah.
do.
And
But like, there's a fine line. Like, I still think that a lot of the recreational is medical. Like, if I
Right.
am going to scream at my kids and I want to stop myself from screaming, in anger, and I was to dose, is that medical or recreational? I think that's medical.
Well, again, right. Here's the thing. There's medicinal use at a recreational level. And I think if you find talking to people that are in line for adult use recreational cannabis, a lot of them don't believe that any of the anxiety, arthritis, chronic pain, seizures, stuff that they've had to deal with, they're like, I'm not sure I want to get a diagnosis of this and get my medical card. But then you explain to them that there's quite a few diagnoses, at least in Massachusetts. And, there are some states like Arkansas, we found out last week, they do not have as many diagnoses for cannabis or medicinal cannabis as Massachusetts does. And in fact, as long as each state is involved with this, each state's going to have their own rules when it comes to diagnosing medical conditions that cannabis can help. So again, plenty of room here in New Jersey. And as far as recreation goes, now, you've heard of Black Friday, right?
Yeah.
And you've heard of Cyber Monday, right?
Yeah.
And that was just Giving Tuesday.
Weed Wednesday or something.
No, it's actually Green Wednesday, the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. Did you know that?
No, I did not. No,
I didn't know that either, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
And that's why, that's why
yeah.
we love MJ Biz Daily, among other
I know,
things.
right? Wait, can we go back really quick? I think, because honestly, what you said about New Jersey and the opioid, so it sounds like they're trying to address the opioid epidemic with cannabis. That's awesome.
Well, I think any state that has an opioid problem, and that of course is most states, recognizes now that cannabis can be used instead of opioids. And there are thousands, if not tens of thousands, of anecdotal stories out there on how cannabis helps victims of PTSD, whether that is caused by our veterans or by any other traumatic incident in our lives. So
absolutely. Can we actually have Isabel reach out? I met Dr. Golden at a summit last year, he created methadone. He made methadone, and now he's like, oops, like at the time it was a good alternative. Right. But now he's, he has a CBD product, and I would love to have him on. So he would be.
There you go. Yeah, now that you've called her out live on our show, I'm sure she's busy Googling, if she's not in the chat room already, seeing if anybody happens to know who that is. And just so you know, so the sales from Green Wednesday were more than Black Friday. So there was more weed sales on Thanksgiving week, the day before Thanksgiving, than there was on Black Friday sales. Pretty amazing to me. A 5% increase over the daily average, and adult use consumers spent on average $78, an increase of approximately 12%. So that marks the first time in 4 years that Green Wednesday has beat out Black Friday. So there you go. There's a lot of weed in the world, and we're just the people to tell you all about it. How's that? That's what we want to do. And we've got some great guests coming up. But as I eye the clock now, we're getting close to our traditional 4:20 break. And this is when I get to explain to people about the Waldos, the group of high school kids from San Rafael, California, back in 1971, who used to meet at 4:20 outside the high school, across the street at the Louis Pasteur statue, to get high, to smoke some cannabis after school. Law enforcement, being those sharp-minded people that are protecting our public safety, figured out that every day these Waldo guys were there smoking weed in public. So what did they do? They picked up on the 420 code. That's how the cannabis community found out about public consumption of cannabis going on at the corner of Main and Smith Street or whatever. 420, cannabis community found out about that code. They embraced it, and now it's become almost a national celebration of cannabis on April 20th every year. And of course, in 2020, we had April 2020, but we were all in COVID shutdown at the time, so nobody got to party, at least not with each other, right?
Yeah.
And of course, now we take our break at 420, because when I was growing up in the greater Massachusetts area, when we heard a certain song called Shanty by Jonathan Edwards, that was our signal to do unto what the Waldos did. So at 420, we take a break, we wave the flag, we show Jonathan Edwards singing his song Shanty, and then we come back on the other side and we get into our interviews with our very special guests on Cannabis Chat. So don't go away.
Yeah, this is a tune that I wrote back in 19... I've forgotten. We had a saying in our old band, one of my first bands in 1966 or so. What are you going to do tonight? Oh, just, you know, like every other night, just going to lay around the shanty and put a good buzz on. Gonna sit down in the kitchen, fix me something good to eat. Make my head a little high, make the whole day complete. Gonna lay around the shanty, oh mama, and put a good buzz on. Pass it to me, baby, pass it to me slow. We'll take time out to smile a little before you let her go. We're gonna lay around the shanty, oh mama, and put a good buzz on. You're on something. Go ahead. Rick Brodsky, everybody. Nothing to do and there's always room for more. Fill it, light it, shut up and close that door, baby. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. Take it, okay. Prohibition never works, it's time to realize it. It grows in my backyard, it's time to legalize it. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. I'm gonna sit down in my rented car. I'm gonna jam it into drive. Gonna head on out and play at WSCA with Sean. I'm glad I'm alive. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on every night and day. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on.
Nice. It's Friday. Thank God.
Take your Zoom call podcasts or webinars to a whole new level.
Nurse Mark and the
Hey.
Green Nurse Podcast. We are here.
That's right. PCM can animate your logo, add eye-catching full-screen graphics, and lower third identifying motion graphics. Look like the network. Act like the network.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.
All right, welcome back to Cannabis Chat for a Monday afternoon. I'm Jimmy Young in the Pro Cannabis Media studios, and I'm always joined on Medicinal Mondays by our friend Alyssa Merrill from flowerandtonic.com. And now we are joined by someone we're both very excited to talk with. Her name's Nikki Lowley. Nikki, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Jimmy. Thanks, Alyssa. Pleasure to be here.
Now, your story is quite compelling. First of all, you were a pediatric nurse for many. Do you still practice?
No, I do not practice.
Oh,
just
but you were a pediatric nurse.
correct.
Gotcha. And you've had a traumatic brain injury, a TBI, as they say. Are you comfortable talking a little bit about your experience with cannabis and how it entered your life?
Sure. I came across cannabis by accident after struggling quite significantly after my injury at work. A child didn't want a vaccine. I was headbutted frontally and I bounced off a wall back into his head. And that day forever changed my life. I was on multitudes of pharmaceuticals, anything from opioids to muscle relaxers, antidepressants, antipsychotics, you name it, I was on it or tried on it. Cocktails of drugs, Botox, SPG blocks. And at the end of the day, they literally made me crazy. I truly was suicidal. I discovered cannabis 100% by accident. No one ever offered it. No one ever talked about it. I mean, I came from Western medicine. So, I knew cannabis is pot, weed. Sure, I smoked it recreationally on occasion. It wasn't anything that I'm ashamed to admit. It was just, I never even thought of it for a brain injury, especially one that was messing my brain up. And as we all know, the anti-drug propaganda just say no. So I finding myself even considering smoking pot when my brain is so messed up and I'm contemplating suicide just didn't sound like a good idea. But I was in Las Vegas contemplating my death, and a mobile billboard came cruising by and said, "Get your weed card in Nevada today." And I was like, get my weed card, right? And I was realizing that I wasn't high enough on the hotel to possibly kill myself. So basically, I decided this was probably not the best day to do this. And then the weed mobile came cruising by again, the other way down the strip. And it was just, when I tell you, Jimmy, the universe just did things that I can't explain that day, because my husband, who's like pretty much world's most conservative human, who doesn't think pot's cool at all, he came back to the room because, he's been living with me for 4.5 months at this point, and I was a basket case. I just was not at all the same human. And he's like, weed card, let's go get it, whatever, let's do whatever it takes. So long story short, got a cannabis card. It was a very quick and easy, painless process in Nevada. And I went to my first dispensary, and my God, I had no idea what I was doing. And it was like, I literally had to just look like what am I doing here? And so the bud tender was a great, friendly kid. I mean, he was a younger guy, but man, did he know his products, I gotta say. But I didn't know what I was looking for. I didn't know what was right, what was wrong. And I mean, I'm just trying to not think of pain 24/7 and not want to off myself. So he suggested some gummies and some suckers, and I'm a sugar addict, so that was applicable. If it tasted gross, I wasn't probably going to go for it. And then some joints, pre-rolls, and one was a heavy indica, and that was the first thing I tried. And I tell you what, I went from being looking over the edge of the balcony to let's go get something to eat. And after being in the fetal position for the first, 24 hours of our vacation, this was a big improvement. And it just has become a total transformation beginning that day. There have been numerous struggles, and I don't want to portray that, I smoked a joint and now I'm 100% better from my brain injury, because that is not the case. But what it has allowed is me to see other things besides just pain and just what the hell am I doing here? And, I'm trying to share that message with others, because it's not really accepted in the Western medicine field the way it should be. And I got to say, if I had been introduced maybe by a doctor, I wouldn't have, had to wait until I was about to Peter Pan off the Cosmopolitan to find this plant. If a physician would have told me, because I was the good patient, I was the one who, went to the doctor like they're supposed to. It was, I was on New York State workers' compensation because it's a work injury, and naturally they pay for nothing. And so the doctors really are not they'll pay for the drugs, no problem. But as far as therapies, anything alternative, testing, things that I paid over 50 grand out of pocket over the last 4 years, just finding a diagnosis. And I finally have one, and everything's all peachy keen, but it took me that long, and all this frustration and anxiety and depression and bullshit to actually really, at the end of the day, find a natural solution. So that's kind of a little summary, if that helps.
That was beyond the summary. And Alyssa, you and I have both heard these stories, not specifically like Nikki's has, but the cannabis becomes a last resort for people who feel like they have nowhere else to go. And then I hear the frustration in Nikki's voice. She would have loved to and have welcomed advice from a medical professional. Alyssa, we hear this all the time, don't we?
Yep. And we were just talking about this. It is so out of their wheelhouse. They, they know single isomers, we're full spectrum. And I don't think, I don't think we can expect physicians to know everything about every alternative. I think I think hopefully we can build an opportunity to educate physicians who a lot want alternatives. They're just not available. I actually was selling Ritalin when there was a study on fish oil, and the parents lined up for that trial. It was out the door. So, I think that we can do better with some trials, and you talk to a lot of, so then tell us where, please, you take over. You right now then decided to go and work with some physicians. Then what was your next step once you saw the difference? How did you want to impact the industry?
Well, honestly, although I'm still licensed as a nurse, I am not practicing. So my role really has been a patient. It really hasn't been as much into the educating and advocating, because I feel like I'm still learning. I feel like I'm in my infancy. I mean, Christ, I just learned about a whole new body system. I mean, the ECS system is not taught in nursing school. I mean, I thought it was such hocus pocus when I heard it. I'm like, right, we got another system in our body. Okay. That to me was like a spaceship coming down the sky. I mean, it just seemed like, no, they can't keep this hidden.
No, I agree. But doctors don't really acknowledge hormones either, right? I mean, in my experience, they don't prescribe medicine for hormones. They don't test. You can't get a test covered for hormones. So I feel like, do you think that they're in a kind of a similar space, like the hormone, like that?
Hormones, though, they can touch. Hormones, they can relate to the endocrine system. Hormones have a place, whereas the endocannabinoid system, they've never heard of. So to them, I mean, to me, I mean, I'm just putting myself in a primary doctors, you know, I mean, I'm not trying to put words in anyone's mouth, but I'm just saying anyone that I talk to, as soon as they hear I'm a nurse, it almost like boosts my credibility. And I don't understand why initials after my name should really matter. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all human. And patients really are the experts in the condition. I have found far more support and far more knowledge by networking with people such as yourself, that maybe I followed you on social media, you know, 2 years ago? I didn't know who Alyssa Merrill was. I had no idea. I didn't know pro cannabis media existed really until you. So it was kind of, again, it's just a universe thing. And I feel like we all just need to be a little more open-minded and help people understand this system. Because if we're relying on doctors to offer this as a therapeutic alternative, it's not going to happen without significant education.
And it's not tested. I mean, I'm sorry, at the dispensary, products are tested, but outside of the dispensary, where people are first kind of dabbling in cannabinoid medicine, you know, with CBD products, not tested, no oversight whatsoever. So it's, I don't think a doctor can responsibly make a recommendation not knowing what's in the bottle, you know? And that goes for supplements as well. Like doctors, I mean, there was a big, you know, the whole vitamin D for babies. Like I put a lot of those gross syrupy drops in my newborn's mouth. And now they're like, oh, just kidding. Like,
just kidding.
Just kidding. we changed our minds. You really didn't have to do that. Or peanut butter, you know, give it 6 months or 5 years, one or the other. Right. So they like, I think that when it comes to dietary and supplements, doctors are just, they weren't trained. It's just what it is. So I think if we accept that, but then the challenge is, how do we educate ourselves? And I think you and I have kind of found ourselves at the same place where we've asked a lot of questions, found the experts. We were just showing our book, but like the real experts, not the people who are selling the products, because Dr. Fauci does not have a website selling products. I think, you know, where seriously like that, but if he could, we would run it. Just kidding. But you know, I do think the scientists are not, they just need to be better heard. And I think that's where you and I found each other, at least working.
One thing I found very interesting is one of the New York State recommended providers for prescribing cannabis says the New York products aren't any good. Buy my products that are in my store right below my office, and they're better full spectrum. They're not even full spectrum in New York State. So again, that made me lose credibility for him. This is the same human that also said smoking cannabis doesn't have any medicinal value. It's just to get you high. So let's go with both of those. And then he tells me that taking a tincture doesn't go through first pass digestion. I'm sorry, this is basic anatomy. Now this I do know. And so for him to even say that was just beyond my understanding. But again, I'm not trying to diss anyone. I'm just trying to say there's a lot of misinformation.
Right. And you're seeing the results that patients experience, you know, on that's, I hear you. Yeah. It's,
So I'm still, right now, I'm not doing anything other than coming on.
Working with me. Yes. We're going to work together and pull together some of our connections. Cause I mean, yeah, we need to get the voices.
I just feel like there really needs to be more acceptance of this plant. Yeah. Unfortunately, I live in a state that I can't access whole plant medicine legally. Yeah. I live in a state that is prohibitive of anything smokable. I mean, we have vapes, yes, but they're not like live resin vapes. They're like, processed shitty vapes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Forgive
So, and you're very well informed. Jimmy, if you want, I'm sorry, was I cutting? Were you going to say something?
I just want to ask, this is a registered nurse, okay? And you go in and you talk to your Western medicine doctors, your brethren, if you will. Doesn't that earn you any respect when you come to the table with an issue and say, look, I've done research on this plant and it says this? They're still putting it at arm's length and saying, I'm not sure I know anything about it. You probably do know more. It didn't earn you any respect at all with your opinions when you talk to these doctors?
I am blown away at the level of disrespect patients get. And this is with me. If you use medical terms to show that you're a medical person, then that's immediately frowned upon by the doctor, because like I can't explain it. It's completely different when you're the white coat and when you're in the blue shirt, I mean, it's just totally different on the different sides of the fence. And I'm a licensed practical nurse.
Is it ego? Is it because most of the doctors are men and they're just full of themselves?
I hate to make a gender bias such as
you can. In my presence, you have my permission, because I am so disgusted with my gender and my race, actually, when it comes to cannabis, because of what has been going on.
Your race?
And
My race. Oh my God. White privilege? Are you kidding me? I should be in jail.
Oh.
I should be. I mean, at some point in my life, I've had plenty of brushes, but oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Plus, it helps when you're a member of the media too, I might add. Or at least I was.
And it does hold a little bit of weight there. I mean, I've had some absolute crazy experiences. I got stopped at the border entering Canada 7 days prior to legalization of Canada, like when the whole country went legal, like 10, 11, 18.
It was October 17th, if I remember correctly.
Yes, correct.
It was my bar mitzvah day. Not that it was my bar mitzvah day that day. I wasn't 13. But my point is, that was my bar mitzvah day. Bizarre stuff. Bizarre stuff.
But so I had partaken prior to crossing the border. It was a beautiful day. I was actually being certified for my medical card, and I was smoking a joint with the windows down. I crossed the border, and they had flagged my thing to go to secondary inspection. Now, I was not born yesterday, Jimmy. So you know what? My dad actually is former customs, like retired. So,
Wow.
So there's some things that I really understand and wouldn't be stupid enough to do, but clearly this isn't the case. So
you had a human moment. You had a human moment. There.
So basically get pulled over. They are ripping apart my whole car, asking me, what's in here? Do you have cannabis with you? I'm like, no, I don't. And they're like, is it okay? We're bringing the canine. I'm like, go right ahead. I was like almost gloating. I was like proud. I'm like, yeah, you're not going to find anything, boys. And so, but let me explain something. When the dog is wagging his tail, that's great. As soon as the dog sits, it's not great. So that dog wagged his tail all the way around my car, in my car, up and down. And then he sat on the seat, the driver's seat. I mean, he sat like a cat, just sat. And I was like, oh shit. And I'm like, there's no way. He's just got to smell it from when I was smoking before, I'm like, there's no way. But those cops tore apart my entire front seat, and what they found was less than 1 gram of cannabis that was in a pre-rolled, what they call a toonie joint. So there's more paper than there is actual cannabis from reservation in Canada that had probably crossed back and forth, I don't know, 100 times. And it had fallen in the fatal hole of death and been ridden back and forth in the seat. So what that did was it landed me 7 years of secondary inspection. Every time I go to Canada now, I either get, the whole cargo gets gone through. It's the most PTSD experience you can ever imagine. And I mean, they'll search my phone sometimes, they'll dog the car again. Oh, and then one of the more recent times that was a problem was, when's the last time you consumed cannabis? A few hours ago. Oh, well, then you're high. You're going to have to go to the police station and get your blood drawn. And if it comes back higher than 2 nanograms, and I don't know if you know anything about nanograms, I sure really don't much, but enough to know that 2 nanograms is like, I don't think I've been 2 nanograms in 3 years. So,
Right.
I mean, it's just an impossibility. And so if you're greater than 2 nanograms, then, we're going to seize your car. You're going to be forever banned from Canada. And I'm like, are you serious right now? Do I sound impaired? Do I seem high? You guys see me 3 times a week. Like me. And it was just a horrific experience. So I caution any medical cannabis patients, you have not smoked in 48 hours. I mean, I feel like I need to tell people. I mean, I'm the honest girl. Like, I'm the girl that'll like really tell you what it is. And now I feel like that's going to be used against me as a patient. And that's just totally not cool.
No, it's not. And this was, you said 7 days before they legalized it.
The first seizure, yes.
Right.
Yeah. My
The first
original
time.
violation. Yeah.
Right.
That
Wow.
lands me the 7 years of secondary. Yes. And it's every time. I mean, it's like 9 out of 10 times. It's like never different. So God forbid a piece falls off. You know what I mean? I mean, the paranoia of extreme measure every time I cross into Canada.
And you do that. You're in Buffalo, so you go back and forth. I'm
All
guessing.
the time. 3,
right?
4 times a week. I mean,
And
it's like,
don't they know who you are at this point? I'm just saying.
they know my cat's name. I mean, okay, give me my license plate is ILV Moose, MOOSE. Trust me when I say the Canadians remember me. Okay, I love moose more than I love people. So I'm like flagged as soon as they're like, "Oh, here's the moose girl." I love my moose mates in Canada.
So now in New York, they're talking about legalizing adult use recreational cannabis. Governor Cuomo's been trying to get it into the budget. He has it in his budget this year. How much will that change as far as the quality? If you can hypothesize.
Sure. I've been active behind the scenes a little bit in the legislation and the movement a little bit. I've been to
Good.
Albany and I've heard the bullshit logic behind a lot of it. And the unbelievable resistance to smoking. They don't want to expand the medical program. They don't want to, they want to just go to rec. We have 10 licensed producers in our whole state, 10. That includes like MedMen. Okay. MedMen's not doing so great these days.
No.
So that's my main plug right around here. So 5% THC is absolutely not effective. And that is the limit of our products. And we have we got the 20-to-1 ratio, the 100-to-1 ratio, but it's all 5 milligrams. What is 5 milligrams? I don't care if it's 100. It's just not going to be effective. So for me anyway, I mean, I have tried literally every single product in New York State. So
no wonder you said the Canadian stuff is far superior.
Far superior. I had a real low bar to go against here, Jimmy. So
I learned that. I did not realize that New York limits its medicinal marijuana to a 5% THC. That's less than the University of Mississippi.
7.5. I could be wrong on the actual 5. Please don't quote me, but it is extremely low. Yeah. It is definitely less than 10. No matter what. I mean, I'm pretty positive it's 5, but again, brain injury, you don't want to really be positive here.
You're not being quizzed and you're not going to be judged on this show. That's for sure. Do you expect changes in New York in the next 6 months? Or you're not too confident?
I'm not too confident. Facts. I mean, the whole diversity package, we had 2 things going on. Like, how the MORE Act federally, well, we had like the MARTA and the CRTA. I don't know what I mean. I forget the details, but the bottom line is one was like completely restrictive, continued with the same 10 people. There was no outside, investment and reinvestment into colors of community, the people that have been wronged by drugs.
Right. We know.
And
Yep.
it was just total shit. And then we have, the sheriffs fighting like bulldogs saying, we don't have resources. We don't have resources. We don't have resources. And they're like making it seem like we're going to have, all these people just swarming everywhere, smoking pot, and, New York Statue of Liberty is just going to be one big cloud. You live in Massachusetts. I don't think that's happened there.
Well, first of all, our governor made sure it didn't happen here. In fact, there was only one public official in the state of Massachusetts who supported question 4, which was the adult use recreational ballot question. His name is Alex Morse. He is now he's going to be the ex-mayor of Holyoke, but he built Holyoke he turned a depressed city around with cannabis businesses. And I really like the mayor of Holyoke for that reason. He was a resident, he grew up there, and he got elected at age 22. And now I believe it's 32 now. And he's, he went, I think he ran for US Congress and didn't win. But it just shows you that the governor of Massachusetts wanted this whole industry to be a very slow rollout. And it took him 2 years just to get the first dispensaries open. And here it is 4 years in. I think we're up to, I think we're over 40 dispensaries now, Alyssa, for adult use.
Yeah, there's a lot popping up. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's not, it's not 200, and I do know that the medical program is pretty vibrant in Massachusetts. So I think that's really a shame that someone like yourself, who understands the power of this plant, needs and wants to be able to take it medicinally, and you are limited in your home state, even though there's a medical program. That's got to be frustrating as all hell.
You can't imagine, especially when you literally can go to Massachusetts. I mean, I have friends all day long going to Massachusetts and buying weed. I mean, it's not like 1 or 2, it's like all day long. I mean, do you know how much revenue is leaving New York State?
Actually, we do know that. Cannavision's actually out in Lee, and a few others right over the border in Great Barrington and in Lee. They're doing great thanks to the New York consumer.
Well, and I mean, I'm one of those paranoid humans that I feel like if I go to your Massachusetts dispensary and I come back to New York, like, why isn't the state trooper just like waiting for me to cross? I mean, there's that stupid, I don't think it's paranoia, it's awareness. It's
no doubt.
That's real.
Your surroundings. And I don't want to go to jail for the plant. I've seen what the Last Prisoners Project and people like Steve D'Angelo and all the people that are supporting all these poor people that are in flipping prison for a plant that is legal in their state.
Wow.
My son has a felony. He was a farmer several years ago. He thought it would be a good idea to have a little garden. This was prior to my injury, prior to my, because I mean, at the time I was the most judgmental, evil person to my son you can ever imagine. I mean, I wanted to kill him like dead. And it was a bad time, but I tell you what, I sure could use the skills right now, but I'm too paranoid to do it. Like, I just want my plant medicine and I can't access it here. And it sucks.
Yeah. And there are a lot of people, Nikki, I've heard these stories and read tons of stuff. They'll move to go to Colorado, to go to California, to go to Oregon.
Ready.
Right?
I'm ready.
Right?
For the right opportunity, I'm in a different state. I really think I can be a powerful voice for the plant. And I believe that there's a purpose for me now. I mean, I feel like I've been given a purpose with cannabis that I never would have had with the brain injury. I'm telling you right now, Jimmy, I would not be here. If I was in the same place I was in January of 2017, I would not be here. I mean, there's no question. I mean, I had it planned. I had it ready. I mean, there was a switch that just clicked, and it was from the pharmaceuticals that I was on, and it was a toxic combination.
Yeah.
And Alyssa, I know this is one of the reasons why you're doing what you do.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
I mean, yes, I'm not going to even show. Yes. Everything she says is yes, yes. My question is the challenge to afford this. Like, I guess I feel like you and I briefly talked about this. Like, first it's getting over the stigma, and then we get over the stigma, then it's like, shoot, but don't go buy these products, buy the product. You know what I mean? Like most of them are bad. So then it's about finding the right products. And now I feel like now it's about how do we pay for the products? Because I don't use a lot of products, but it's expensive. It's a very expensive
Medicine.
alternative. Yeah. And yeah,
there's no
unfortunately,
copay. There's no copay for weed, medicinal weed.
Hey, I had to redo my Medicare thing, like re-sign up for Medicare because like when you're disabled, that's like your new insurance. So I'm an old person technically, and so I'm like, I asked the guy, like, so which plan covers the cannabis? And they're like, the what? The pot. Which one covers the pot? Oh, it's a federal program. We can't cover pot. And it was just funny. I just thought I'd bust the guy's balls a little, but yeah.
but you can probably speak best to like what's going on with, products like the Hope. You've been involved in watching that kind of come to light.
I absolutely love Mara Gordon, Erica Daniels, Zolera, Ilera, everything that Tara Ascend and the whole group has done with what they're doing with Hope Grows for Autism.
Can you do we have another minute for her to share that real quick? Because
We got about 3 minutes. Go ahead.
Yeah, do you mind? Because I sometimes have a hard time articulating it, but you've seen it all evolve and I have not.
Okay. Well, I mean, please don't like hold me to this.
No.
It's
Yeah.
my own personal understanding.
Yeah.
So Tara Ascend is the parent corporation of Ilera, and Ilera is a dispensary in Pennsylvania that they are more than a dispensary though. They're a grower. I really specialized in genetics. So Tara Ascend, when they were looking to build their portfolio, Ilera was an excellent acquisition. They also have a wonderful place in New Jersey now. They're going to be one of the New Jersey. They were chosen 2 years ago. So they're part of the New Jersey movement. I mean, these guys are strategic. Apothecarium in Las Vegas and in California is also owned by Tara Ascend. So these are all brands under the Tara Ascend.
And what do they do?
Huh?
Tell me about Hope. Tell me about the program.
Hope is for autism, and they have two different formulations. One is a 1-to-1 THC to CBD, and the other is, I think, 5-to-1. It could be 2-to-1. But it's designed specifically for children with autism. Erica Daniels worked with Mara Gordon to formulate Hope, and from what I understand, it's actually being used in research trials in Children's Hospital Philadelphia or Pittsburgh, one or the other, and also in New Zealand or Australia, where Zolera is located.
Gotcha. Well, there you go. We know that we're just still scratching the surface on research. I do think there's going to be some changes, although maybe not as quick as we'd like being cannabis advocates at the federal level. But I do think that the recognition of cannabis that has medicinal qualities, getting it off Schedule 1 alone will be a huge win for so many people, and including the businesses. And I just hope that we do see that in the next 6 months. I'll give it a 6-month period. If it happens in 12 months, I'm going to be just as happy. I wish it would happen in 6 months, but as we've learned in COVID time, nothing happens fast these days, does it?
No.
Well, Nikki Lawley from Buffalo, New York, NikkiandthePlant.org. That's where people can find you, correct?
Correct. Or LinkedIn or Facebook, Nikki Lawley.
I found you everywhere. I found you. And it's double K. Make sure people understand it's Nikki with a double K, Nikki, right?
Correct. You got it.
Well, it was a great conversation. Thank you so much for enlightening us about your story. A lot of respect from here. And feel free, anytime you need a forum, you let Alyssa know or myself know, and you've got time on our show anytime.
Thank you so much, Jimmy. And thank you, Alyssa. You guys are great. Have a
Thank you. Appreciate it. And we're going to have more, and we're going to talk with Brittany Carboni, the founder and CEO of Tonic, after this break. Don't go away. Hi, I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media. And as a sportscaster on TV and radio for 25 years, people always thought I was an expert on sports. They used to come up to me at bars and go, "Hey, sports guy, are the Bruins going to win the Stanley Cup or what?" I didn't know then, and I don't know now. Just because I reported on sports and talked intelligently about my love for sports, I was not an expert. I was a talk show host, an anchor, a reporter. Sure enough, the same is true in the cannabis industry. Now, even though it's been around for thousands of years, research is just beginning. The difference, of course, is that there are no real experts in the cannabis space. However, we all believe that we're experts in our own field. For instance, we at Pro Cannabis Media have 75 years of combined experience in commercial media, buying, production, and strategic market planning. Now, we want to help you control your message. After all, you're probably considered an expert in your field, whether that's lighting or containers, law, interior design, or even security systems. We already have an expert in the insurance business for MRBs, that's marijuana-related businesses. Bill Perrier from Charles River Insurance is our expert. He's a member of our PCM Gold Club of experts, and he explains that one of the largest insurers in the world is now writing insurance for cannabis farmers.
Lloyd's of London, 325 years old, the standard bearer in the market, is with a company called Chesterfield Brokers that have launched this parametric insurance for crops.
Insurance is all about timing, and it's a shame we couldn't have got these programs up for the farmers and the other cannabis growers who've been really affected by those West Coast fires.
We also have an accountant for the cannabis space. He's a CPA, Rick Leneve of Accounting Buds, and we rely on both of them for their expertise, and we showcase their expertise in our news and talk shows. In fact, we'll put them inside our original content, and we can talk to them. It's kind of like product placement. So show off your knowledge inside our content as we position your expertise in your field. And you do that by joining our Cannabis Gold Club of experts. That's where you get a chance to show our audience your expertise in your field. This group of entrepreneurs will serve as a referral network in order to generate leads for your business and, of course, build your expertise because it'll be shared during our weekly news and talk shows. So if you want to take advantage of our following and the original content we produce on a weekly basis, contact me, Jimmy Young, or our sales team today. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Take your Zoom call podcasts or webinars to a whole new level.
Nurse Mark and the Green Nurse Podcast. We are here.
That's right. PCM can animate your logo, add eye-catching full-screen graphics, and lower third identifying motion graphics. Look like the network. Act like the network.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Welcome back to Cannabis Chat for a Medicinal Monday. I'm Jimmy Young in the Pro Cannabis Media studios, and we are always joined on Mondays by Alyssa Merrill, the founder of flowerandtonic.com. And we always have some great interviews, and you know what? Pretty much equal time. I'll say the great interviews go male and female. In this case, we've got another female. Her name is Brittany Carboni, and your company is Tonic.
Yes.
Now, do you know of a company called Flower and Tonic?
I do. I do have the pleasure of, great minds think alike. And introduced to Alyssa, we connected a couple of years ago, and I've always had so much respect for the way that she entered the industry. When she first reached out, it was always all about the science and the validity of the products that she was standing behind. And I have a lot of respect for what she does, and I'm really excited to be joining you guys tonight.
Well, we thank you for that. And it says here that Tonic is a wellness company that develops CBD-based topicals and orals from organically grown hemp-derived CBD. When did you start this company, and how's it going?
We started back in 2017. I started to develop the formulas early 2017. I really developed them for my own use. I was working as a personal trainer at the time, and I was starting to share it with my clientele, and they were having amazing results as well. And that's really how I decided to make this into an actual business and started to develop the rest of the product line. And we've officially launched at the end of 2017. And from there, it's really been a bit of a whirlwind. We started our own hemp farm in 2018. So we just finished up our third grow on Tricola Farms. And we actually just launched our extraction and product development arm of our operation, Bardo Labs, this past March. So we have fully kind of closed the loop and became a vertically integrated company. So we are able to say that we control every aspect of the process from seed to sale.
There you go. Well, congratulations on that, because that is not an easy thing. And it's upstate New York, you said, right?
Yes.
So we just talked with Nikki Lawley from Buffalo, and she enlightened me about the strict nature of the cannabis regulations in the state of New York, despite having a governor who really wants to open up that market because he recognizes so many New Yorkers are going over the border to Massachusetts, Vermont, soon New Jersey, and all that. How challenging is it with the rules that you're given? Now, you're on the hemp side, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So
it's actually super interesting because we actually are our extraction facility, Bardo Labs, which is in one facility, kind of houses Bardo and Tonic. All of our extraction, manufacturing, and distribution is all housed in this building that I'm in right now. And that is legitimately 15 feet off of the New York border into Pennsylvania. But our farm is in New York. And why we did that was actually kind of just because of the fact that New York was so strict at the time that we were applying for our processing license. They pretty much shut out all small businesses from the opportunity to be able to open up processing in New York. It was really shut out. But it was when Cannabis was about to break ground, or said that they were going to break ground here. And, they got expedited licensing, about, millions and millions of dollars in tax breaks, promises of employing hundreds of people. Still never even broke ground on that facility. That was almost 2 years ago now. So what we did, because, we really needed this aspect of the business to be able to really optimize all of the other arms that were operating. And so we decided to go, like I said, 15 feet off the border into Pennsylvania. And honestly, it has helped us now with these stricter regulations that are coming out in New York, because we follow all of New York guidelines as far as the standard to which we operate, following all CGMP guidelines, making sure that we are meeting the dietary supplement manufacturing standards. Whether or not we can classify as a dietary supplement is another story, but kind of meeting New York's rigorous manufacturing standards, right? But now what New York is mandating is no smokable flower is allowed to be sold. Suppositories, transdermal patches, those are off the table. It's just imposing a lot of these kind of arbitrary restrictions. And like you said, when you're trying to legalize recreational and adult use cannabis, why are you trying to push out smokable hemp flower? It just doesn't really seem like it makes much sense. So what we're hoping is happening is that they're kind of just reverting to the really kind of first run 2014 Farm Bill kind of language, and just kind of holding down the fort until adult use is passed, because there's going to be what's called a committee of cannabis oversight, Department of Cannabis Oversight in New York, which will oversee both THC and CBD, right? Hemp, cannabis, all of it. So we're hoping that this is kind of like a stopgap that they're putting in place until they have the capabilities to overhaul the whole thing as a whole. But in the meantime, it's putting a lot of farmers in New York State at risk. It's putting a lot of manufacturers through the ringer, and it's putting a lot of uncertainty even to the retailers in New York State. For retailers, you're going to have a license to sell CBD. You're not allowed to sell that smokable flower, which is a huge part of a lot of people's business. So it's going to be really interesting to see what the final determination is on this, because there's a comment period open until January 11th. So if you do have stake in the New York cannabis market, I do recommend looking into this and seeing, you know, how you can make your voice heard in this matter. If, you know, if you do have a stake in any of those products that are on the chopping block.
Are you confident in your legislature to do the right thing?
No. I've been
had to
burned
ask.
many times, you know?
Yeah. I had to ask. It just boggles the mind that there's
Yeah.
so many people that are passionate about this, so much education that's out there, and
Mhm.
it's still being treated like the necessary evil weed
Right.
at every legislature branch. They just,
Yep.
it's like, oh, I gotta learn about this product now. Oh, I
Right.
please.
And
You know, heaven forbid your constituents actually want you to understand it, but that's
Exactly.
another story. Alyssa, go ahead. I know you have a
her
question.
product, and I swear this is a true story. It was a 4th of July weekend. Her product, a friend of mine, he's a nutritionist, has a daughter who's really been struggling with like psychosis, really since a young age, and she was on a medication regimen switch. And we were at the Cape, and she called me. She's like, "Do you have that?" She had tonic vibes, and she was using it for herself. And she's like, "My daughter's having an episode," and she literally was like taking her to the psychiatric ward and gave her. She's like, "Can I give it to her?" And she gave it to her, and she's like, and I asked her about like her cycle. You know, she's a teenager, and she was PMSing, and I'm like, give her that, absolutely, without a doubt, give it to her, because that's my hormonal like craziness go to.
Yep.
And it kept her out of the psych ward. Like her
That's
product, I mean, I swear, and this, it's kind of amazing. Like this is truly a medicine. So to be slapped on the hand for it, it's just so horrible hearing the things that it's being. I'm sorry you go through.
Right, yeah. Thank you for sharing that story, though. That's amazing. And yeah, that's like, you know, no matter how stressful this being in this industry gets and how much like they just make you want to quit and make it so difficult, like that's why you keep going. Like stories like that is just what keeps that fire in my belly for sure.
Yeah. And you've done it right. I have to say, I mean, you're following the rules. I think you're one of the few brands too that's like trying to speak to doctors, because that's always been why it's taken me so long, you know, to kind of get going, is because I wanted a message good enough to bring to a doctor, and it's hard to find in this industry. It's hard to find products good enough and messaging and responsible messaging. So and I will say, even though the law the way things are might not work, and I feel like your tincture, you don't need a smokable when you have your tincture. And I'm typically someone, I don't love tinctures. I'm so picky, as Jimmy knows. Now I can at least own it and say it with pride, but I'm really picky, and I like very few tinctures. I love your tincture. It works fast. It's reliable. We've had John McKay test it at his lab, and it's like spot on. Shake it up and you're good to go. It's just
Amazing.
Awesome.
Thank
And I remember laughing. Oh my gosh, we'd have to tell you something funny. So we go back pretty far. And I laughed at you because you're like, oh, because like, you have to understand, like I came from the place where all of you were hippies, and I was like, okay, well, with your like spirit animal, and I'll talk to you later. And I have totally flipped to see things differently now. But you had said something about taking one of the products like Bear, like for you or your pet. And I was like, oh, that just goes too far. I was like, I'm not going to share it with my dog. But now, yes, 100%. We all have COVID dogs, and we're messing them up as much as they're messing us up. So 100%, we need to market your product. And I thought you were crazy when you said that.
Oh, absolutely. I was just been rubbing Grounded in my dog's ears lately. Like when she gets too panicked, this has been like my new go-to trick to share with people, and I would love to share with everybody listening.
Yes.
Rubbing the CBD oil in your dog's ear. So just like obviously not sticking it like in the canal, but just like you're just giving them an ear rub. Rub the oil in your hand first. What that does is actually like the same kind of thing, like the same reason why we put it under our tongue.
Yeah.
It's because all of the capillaries that are, you know, very much packed within the dog's ear, it's like kind of a like more straight access to the bloodstream. So like for the, you know, obviously if you do have a dog that can hold the oil under its tongue for 30 seconds, then, you know, that's a talented dog. So just go along with that. But for most, I don't think that that's the case. So if you like, you know, want to just get the oil to absorb more quickly and more efficiently at a higher rate of bioavailability, you can rub it in their ears, and that will help to get to the bloodstream more directly.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah. Fun
I
fact.
love
No, when I
learning.
learned that, I was like, this is the best trick ever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love learning new stuff on this show
Yeah.
all the time. It's great. And Lord knows, I think it was Nikki, I think it was Nikki who said there's being an expert in this business. And yet Beth Waterfall, who runs Elevate New Northeast, that is an educational program, pretty much said on this show, there are no experts in cannabis because we're still learning so much about this plant, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree. It's like, that's the one thing that I think like you kind of just need to come to terms with as you enter this industry is like, if you think you know everything, you've already lost, because like we're just continuously finding out more things, and you just have to keep an open mind and be willing to adapt, and just I find it exciting, you know what I mean? Just when you think that that's it, that we've like kind of figured something out, or made a determination one way or another, like new research comes out, new science comes out, and it's it's definitely a super exciting time. And I mean, definitely even like the minor cannabinoids, and like getting more of an understanding around CBG and CBN, CBC, and it's definitely a really exciting time to kind of be in the space developing product and helping other people understand your endocannabinoid system and everything that it can do.
Well, you nailed it. Like, I think you, I mean, your formulation, and you did it a while ago. So, I mean, there are very few brands that I feel like you're a second, I call it like that. There's a first generation and a second generation. You're kind of like the second generation brand that has been here, and you just did it right from the beginning. So, people hire formulation experts. Did you come up, like, can you talk a little bit about the ashwagandha and like the different products and how you created them? And because they're amazing.
So I created them. Like I was saying, I was working as a personal trainer, right? And I was looking for something that could help with my anxiety and with my depression, as much as cannabis, always had, but something that wouldn't leave me high training my clients all day. So that's when I came across CBD, and as I started to learn about it more and really started to understand it more, because like once I tried it, I was very surprised at how well it actually worked, right? And once I started to really understand how it was working and dive into the endocannabinoid system and how CBD acts within your endocannabinoid system, I started to draw the parallels between CBD and these more kind of traditional adaptogens like ashwagandha that I was already using on myself with my clients. And it's, something that I always had success with, it just wasn't getting me all the way to the finish line. That's why I was still looking for something like CBD. So then once I kind of understood that, once I connected those dots, I'm one of those people that is like, if some is good, more is better. Sometimes that works out, sometimes it doesn't, but this time it definitely did. And, because my idea was, well, if I combined these two things that are working towards the same goal of restoring and maintaining your body's ideal state of balance, reducing stress, helping your body defend against stress, if I combine the two, they can kind of take their different pathways to get to the same goal and cover more ground while they're doing it, right? And kind of get to that goal more efficiently. So that was the theory, and the theory checked itself out in practice, and I started to combine it in a very, very kind of crude fashion. Like I would take my CBD tincture and my ashwagandha tincture and kind of just mix it up, right? And I started to, once I started to feel those results, that's when I started to try to figure out like, okay, how do I make this actually like, a combination, like an actual combo. And I started to work some rough formulations together, and I started to share it with my clients. And once I started to share it with my clients and realize that it wasn't a one-off thing that was just me, that this was actually helping a lot of people, everybody that I gave it to, there was some kind of reaction. That was really like when I was like, okay, like I said before, this can really be a business. I can really help people with this. And then that was when it kind of came to like the legit drawing board, as far as like, okay, how do I make this actually taste good? How do I make sure that it's that these two ingredients don't like interact negatively with each other at all? Like, when can they possibly interact negatively, right? Like it was, and like I said, it was not a lot of research. This was back in early 2017, not a lot of research whatsoever, not a lot of information whatsoever around CBD alone, let alone combining CBD with other ingredients like ashwagandha. So it was a lot of researching the individual ingredients, understanding the effect that they had individually on the body, and then kind of cross-referencing them. So it took a long time for me to do that on my own as I was training. And then it was really through feedback from my clients that helped me to build out the rest of the line. Like, it was very clear right away that I wanted something for pain relief, because that's what a lot of the client base I was working with. I was doing a lot of prehab and rehab work, mobility work. So I knew I wanted something for the pain relief. That's how the roll-on topical came about. Again, a lot of just research into the best essential oils for various issues. And then really from feedback from the clientele that I was testing it on, saying that they wanted something to help them sleep more, that they wanted really help with sleep and more relaxation. That was what spurred Chill Tonic, which is by far our bestseller, hands down, since day one. Chill Tonic has been, like, our customers' favorite, the highest rated best-selling blend. And that was really because of the feedback that I was listening to from people. Like, the OG was great for me, for my anxiety, made me feel great. But listening to the feedback of the rest of my clientele, like, all right, how can we make this more relaxing? So we upped the CBD a bit. And then I did experiment with a lot of different herbs before landing on this final one with Chill. And it was really came down to eliminating the herbs that seemed to have a very varied effect. Like kava root was one of them. And like, that definitely like would work super well for some people. Other people like give really weird dreams or kind of make them racy. Same thing with valerian root. We got a very kind of varied feedback from valerian root. So it really, like, it was all about making sure that we were bringing the most healing and mitigating the most risk, right? And that was really the kind of the general theme when I was formulating.
Now, I got both of you have used this word, okay? And it is the first time I've ever heard this word. So you got to help me out. It's ashwagandha. What is ashwagandha? Can I get it in a store? In a spice rack? Where is that?
How do you pronounce it, first of all? Because I've mispronounced it for like years. And
it's ashwagandha.
Yeah. Isn't that what I said? Ashwagandha.
Yes. Yeah, you got it right.
So what the hell is it?
It's an adaptogenic herb. It's actually the root is the very beneficial part, the root of the herb. So it's an adaptogen, which means an herb that has a normalizing effect on the body. That's basically, it's for it to be an adaptogen, it has to have a normalizing effect and be non-toxic and a plant-based source. Those are pretty much like the three major boxes for an adaptogen. So basically what that means is, like CBD, these adaptogenic herbs, they don't really have one specific effect or like one specific benefit. It actually will work to create balance throughout your whole body. So it'll adapt to what your body needs in order to restore and maintain its ideal state of balance, kind of no matter what's happening around you, right? So it's really good for to defend against stress. Ashwagandha specifically, what it's really great for is regulating cortisol levels and modulating your stress response. So, if you have chronically elevated cortisol levels, ashwagandha can help to lower those cortisol levels, get you out of that fight or flight response, and get you into rest and digest, and kind of get everything running a little bit more smoothly, help adrenal output, and help to just balance your overall energy levels, mood, stress levels.
Hormones.
That's hormones.
Hormones are Alyssa's first middle name.
I brought this to like what did you say?
I said hormones are your middle name.
No, seriously. They're still not. Yeah. I know. Hope is hope. Oh, close. My parents were hippies, actually. Oddly. I was not.
I'm shocked to hear that.
I know, but I was not. I seriously was like, go hug another tree a few years ago. I did not think this was legit. And now I'm all like grounding myself. Mm-hmm. Thanks to you, I learned. And I told someone on the soccer field, it always comes back to the soccer field. Yes, I'm like, we're all losing it recently because I don't know, stuff was coming out on the field that were like, whew. And I'm like, take off your shoes, everybody. And everyone took off their shoes. I'm like, grounding, it helps you to and I learned this from a newsletter from your website. Amazing. You want to explain it better than me, right? It's like a thing. If you ground yourself, your stress, put your foot on a natural surface, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. No, it's really, they were all like, I don't know.
And no, it sounds crazy and you kind of feel crazy at first, but you really can't deny it.
Yeah. You've shared, we're on the same page. Like, I think, she's shared. Sometimes people go a little crazy with some of the alternative options. You know what I mean? Like, but I think you've really got kind of the science based, which I like.
I think it's her always has to be a healthy balance between the two. You know what I mean? It's definitely have to kind of mix both worlds together. That's what I like to, the approach that I like to take, right? Because it's all equally important, I think, in different ways.
Absolutely.
Can I get ashwagandha at like GNC?
Yes. Yeah.
You can
get that pretty much. You can get it anywhere. It's really become very popular over the past couple of years. You see kind of different supplements with it mixed in, some like drinks and things like functional beverages and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's definitely become more and more of like a mainstream remedy for stress and relaxation. Yeah.
But they're not all created this kind of like the CBD world. Like, cause
absolutely.
like melatonin, I never thought it worked. And I still alone don't think it would work, but with CBD, I think it does work. And I think that that's the same thing with, with what
definitely. It's just like CBD, like you said, like it's depends like how much is actually in there. Is it just like a vanity ingredient? Like what else is it mixed with? How is it extracted? All of those things for sure make a difference.
And I know you source just as carefully as she grows her own, her own products. You source all of your ingredients very, very carefully. I remember.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We source our other herbs from all organic sources. We ensure that they're sustainably sourced as well. Those materials are tested, identity testing and potency testing for the active ingredient that should be in there. And then we do those extractions in-house after running it kind of through. We do like a test to validate the solubility of the herbs basically, and to ensure that we're pulling everything out of there properly. And then we run our own in-house extractions of those herbs. So we, like I said, from seed to sale, the whole thing, we have an eye on it all.
Yeah. You're a vertical.
Well, it's an amazing product. It's delicious. It's like everything. It checks every single box for me. And I'm just happy to see where you've come in the past couple of years. It's wonderful. So
thank you so much.
And you can get it at flowerandtonic.com. I'm going out on a limb.
Yes, I have it at flowerandtonic.com.
Right?
I'll promote the site one day. Yes, I will. Yes. It really is. It's always been there. It's just that good. It's amazing. Yeah.
And if you don't want to go to flowerandtonic.com and you want to go directly to Brittany, where can we find Brittany at Tonic?
Tonic Vibes.
Tonicvibes.com. Yep.
Tonic Vibes.
And your number one product, just quickly, is Chill. Number one selling product is Chill.
Yep.
And how do your dosing recommendations to people if they ask friends or family, if they were to ask you?
Yeah, I would say if you're using it at night to help with relaxation and sleep, I would say start with 1 full milliliter dropper before, like an hour before bed at least. And then if you're using it during the day to kind of just take the edge off, if you have kind of more like racy kind of anxiety that you're trying to manage, I would say start with 0.5 milliliters if you're going to do daytime use, just to make sure it's not making you too sleepy or anything like that. Then you might be able to bump that up after like, a few days of trying that dosing out. You might be able to bump it up to 0.75 to 1 full milliliter during the day. But I always like to have people start a little bit lower on the daytime use, just in case it makes them a little sleepy.
Okay. All right. Well, that's Brittany Carbone from Tonic Vibes. And I learned a new word. I got to tell you, ashwagandha. I'm going to go get some ashwagandha next and give it a shot. But I'm also going to order that Chill product because I have someone that would be perfect candidate for the Chill.
All right. Then go to Flower and Tonic. Go to flowerandtonic.com. Get your Chill tonic. It has ashwagandha in it. Boom, boom, boom. Done.
There you go. There's another line. I'm not going to use it because I'm using my edit function. Hey, Brittany, thank you so much. Again, I really enjoyed it, and I look forward to your products. And please keep in touch.
Will do. Thank you guys so much for having me. I appreciate it. Happy holidays.
Yep, happy holidays. And just a few more minutes, we're going to talk with Dr. Eric Ruby on Cannabis Chat. Big finish. Don't go away. We'll have more after this.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Well, hello there. Here we are again, another live stream from the new studio of Pro Cannabis Media. This is Cannabis Chat, and I'm Jimmy Young. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Weed Talk News. I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media.
And I'm Kurt Dalton, the founder of Cannabis.net.
Every week, Kurt and I get together to review some of the biggest stories in the cannabis industry. He and I talk about them. We have a few comments, and then we get reports from Canada, New York, and Washington, D.C.
And this week's no different, Jimmy. We finally have Vermont moving toward recreational cannabis with retail opening in their state. We have an old state and a new state, Colorado and Illinois, both setting cannabis sales records in July, as well as multiple efforts to legalize the cannabis plant in America, including our friend Steve D'Angelo getting involved.
But first, let's go to Deborah Borchardt in New York to check on the financial weed scene. Deborah?
Thanks, Kurt. Thanks, Jimmy. Well, things seem to keep going the wrong way for Charlotte's Web.
Whoa, Jimmy Young in the weeds on the water this week. We've got the CEO of Kushko, Nick Kovacevic, with me. This guy has built his little company in 6 years from $2 billion in sales to $145 million in sales.
We can get this thing to be fully legal here in the next few years, I believe, but it's going to take far longer for the stigma to change.
I think you guys are the pro-cannabis story.
And I love Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, I'm Jody Roberts with Eastern Security State, and I love Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, I'm Laura Beener. I'm the president co-founder of The Healing Rose, and I love Pro Cannabis Media. It's been such an integral part of our success here at The Healing Rose.
And you know what? The best media company out there is Pro Cannabis Media. Look out for them. They'll make you famous.
Hi, I'm George, and I love Pro Cannabis Media. I also love Western Mass Hydroponics, where we've got everything you need from seed to bloom to bud, and then to smoke it afterwards.
Take your Zoom call podcasts or webinars to a whole new level.
Nurse Mark and the Green Nurse Podcast. We are here.
That's right. PCM can animate your logo, add eye-catching full-screen graphics, and lower third identifying motion graphics. Look like the network. Act like the network.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.
All right, welcome back to the final half hour of Cannabis Chat for this Medicinal Monday. I'm Jimmy Young from the Pro Cannabis Media Studios, and I am joined as usual on Mondays with Alyssa Merrill, the founder of flowerandtonic.com. And we are so happy to welcome in Dr. Eric Ruby into our interview Zoom room. Dr. Eric Ruby, thank you so much for joining us here on Medicinal Monday.
Pleasure to be here.
And actually, it's not our first time meeting because you were part of a historic live stream that I was involved with in July of 2019. And here we are, over a year later, still getting the word out and talking about cannabis as a medicinal product. Now, your story, I'm very comfortable talking about your story, but I've always felt that the people who have the story should tell it. You have a very personal reason why you were introduced to cannabis and you saw how powerful it was used as a medicine. Can you relate the story to us about your son?
Yes, 20 years ago, we received a phone call in the middle of the night that no parent wants to ever get, that your son is in the emergency room. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. Can you come down to New York now? We found out that my son was hit by a car and he was paralyzed. They knew it right away. And for about a year, he had significant central neuropathic pain, and he was on analgesics, opioids, and well-meaning physicians in the Boston area and New York area ended up causing him a great amount of problems with those medications. He became suicidal, and things were not doing well. And then one day he came to me and said, Dad, that pain that's 9 out of 10 all the time, central neuropathic pain, phantom pain, it's going away. I said, well, what'd you do? And his statement was, I've been smoking with my friend and the pain's going away. I said, well, that's great, but you can't use marijuana in Massachusetts. You'll get arrested. The prisons are not exactly wheelchair friendly. You're going to have to move to Colorado or California. And when he announced to me and to his mother at that time that he was moving to Colorado, she almost killed me because when you're paralyzed, you don't move halfway, 2,000 miles away. But he spent 3 years in Colorado learning what he needed. He got off all of his addicting opioids, and he was able to use a lot of CBD and not as much THC. Over the course of time, he's been actually, he with the amount of money he received from being hit by that car, he was in a crosswalk with a green light, and it was totally the person's fault. He was able to buy a grow facility, and he learned, he brought his team back to Connecticut, and he was the first licensed grow facility in Connecticut. He's doing very well. It's an 80,000 foot grow facility now, and he's still #1 in Connecticut. So seeing what happened to him and researching it for 15 years while he was doing all this, when Massachusetts opened up for medicinal cannabis, I signed on, and that was 5 years ago. But in 5 years, the American Academy of Pediatrics, although they have a policy that if no other modality works, cannabis is to be accepted as treatment. So I have been seeing families for 5 years, and the problems have ranged from pain to epilepsy to Crohn's disease, significant amounts of anxiety with people who have tried black market cannabis and really need better direction. So when you fill out the forms, and they used to be 27 pages, I always show, when I give a lecture, I always show the Constitution of the United States is, I hold it up, and it's a little pamphlet, and it's about 12 pages. But the DPH regulations, I hold that up, it's 57 pages. So there's a little bit of a disconnect. It wasn't easy to get the medicinal part going, and the recreational part also has been a bear. But I can tell you, after a 9.5-hour meeting of the Mass Medical Society on Saturday, Zoom, we came up with a policy that now does allow for, initially the MMS was totally against all cannabis. They called it marijuana. It was radioactive plutonium. Doctors who utilized it were told by the lawyers, you're going to get arrested, you're going to lose your license, you're going to put you in jail, you're going to be fined. All of that was, we could call false news. That's not what happens. If you go by the book, if you do the regulations, if you are conscientious, you can prescribe cannabis, or I should say you can certify a patient. And once that patient is certified, you can advise and consult on the proportions and the milligrams. And it is right now, that policy from the MMS stresses research and education. And now nothing in that policy says marijuana. It's all cannabis. So they're trying to get rid of the stigma. And that was something that I worked out with the chair of the public health department, public health committee. It was after everything was vetted. We vetted it through the legislative committee, which I'm on, and the education committee. So this is a very, very good policy, which is significantly more liberal than we've ever had before. I was hoping I would see it in the Globe on Monday, but the meeting went all day Saturday, and I don't know what's happened for Sunday anyway. But I'm getting the full information, and I will disseminate it to various places so that the public knows that the doctors in the Mass Medical Society are now going to be on board much more than they were. So I've talked for, 11 minutes, and I think I should open it up to whatever you want.
Well, first of all, thank you for breaking that story. That is great news. And it's funny. Sometimes when you retire, this is what I hear. Oh, wait, I've got to stroke this monitor. Hang on. Magic. Sometimes when you retire, you discover that you're actually more important than you were when you were actually keeping office hours and seeing patients regularly. I mean, you're retired now, right?
Well, yes. The issue is, though, they wanted to throw a retirement party for me. And I said, I've had a party every day for 43 years.
Oh, that's nice.
And I'm writing in a journal, and it says in the journal, what do you want to do today? And I wrote down, I want to see patients. That's what I do. So it just was, I told my staff in the summertime, we don't have treatment for COVID. We don't have a vaccine for COVID. And my staff has been with me for 35, 40 years, almost all of them. So we're all over 65. And I said, we are lucky so far. We're seeing 20 kids a day because you can't do immunizations virtually. 20 kids a day, 20 parents a day. Everybody has their temperature taken. Everybody says they haven't been exposed. And since March, we've had to close the office down twice because of COVID exposures, and everybody has to get tested.
Right.
This is a terrible situation. I gave a presentation to the Taunton Board of Health. Taunton Education Department, pardon me. The superintendent of schools had a paper that I wrote, and I said, get good on being virtual.
Right.
Because you're going to send them back to school, and 2 weeks later, they're going to be home again. And if you're doing it hybrid, 2 days there and 2 days not, that's still the same exposures for the teachers. And my patients are teachers too, and they don't want to teach, at least not face-to-face. This is dangerous.
Right.
And look at the numbers. I think Charlie Baker's done a pretty good job. I think he's kind of afraid to be a little more specific, but he really should be, because with the numbers going up, so I told my staff, I'm stopping October 30th, because then you're going to have Halloween, then you're going to have Thanksgiving, then you're going to have Christmas, and everybody's going back to school. So guess what's going to happen? And it's here. And I didn't need a crystal ball to figure that one out. and neither did all of our leadership at public health. And I was very excited to hear that medical schools applications are way up because of the Fauci effect. And I just hope people understand medical school's tough. You got to work hard. And a good example of that is the fact that we had a 9.5-hour meeting of the Mass Medical Society, and nobody wanted to cut it short. And we kept going. We took a half an hour for lunch and 2 10-minute breaks, and we kept going and going and going, and everybody stayed. There were 200 people who were on this virtual meeting, about 160 at the end. But that's the commitment that you have to have for medicine. So I'm glad there's a Fauci effect, but I think that we need the people to realize masks are important. 6-foot distancing is important. Washing your hands is important. And the crowds, I'm not a religious person, I'm a spiritual person, but I can't imagine a religious leader who would jeopardize his flock to preach the gospel and then have it be a super spreader event. That is, God is not going to protect them from COVID. God gave us COVID. Now we have to do something about it. So I'm getting a little bit off of cannabis.
It's okay.
But I can tell you that if you smoke it or vape it, probably not a great idea right now since COVID does affect the lungs. And I would be much more in favor of concentrates and oils and pills and edibles. It is metabolized differently and you will get a different effect. So it's going to take time to figure out how it's working. It's always start low, go slow. And when you change from one medication to another, you got to be careful.
Can I ask you, getting back to the COVID, and as a pediatrician, I have 3 young kids, and I used to sell Ritalin as a pharmaceutical rep. So I think the thing that's coming to me nonstop is like parents want to put their kids on medication right now, like it's not going great at home. And I realize we have to be home and this is the safe place to be. I strongly believe that, CBD is a better alternative than Xanax for a kid or Ritalin. I'm curious as a physician, like, are you seeing a lot more cases that you're looking as for anxiety as more of an option than it was previously, or how are you feeling? Because I think there's some mixed reviews on that topic.
Well, you bring in a lot of thoughts here.
Mm-hmm.
Now, ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or attention deficit disorder, we're talking about a kid who is very active, that's the hyperactivity, or very non-focused. But in children who are anxious become very non-focused and very active. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So although it's operationally defined as attention deficit disorder, attention hyperactivity disorder, what is the etiology? Is it truly a problem with learning and reception of information and processing? Or is it a child who is so distracted and so upset and suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, or suffering from the disorder that right now all his parents and her parents are going through?
Yeah, my yelling at your kids.
So we're really treating ADHD probably too much with medication and not looking to the real basis of it. So when you talk about CBD, CBD decreases the anxiety and allows the child to focus better and allows the child to calm down. So I'm much in favor of trying 5 milligrams or 10 milligrams or 15 milligrams, start low, go slow, and do it once a day or twice a day or 3 times a day. There is not a problem with CBD. The only issue I say is please get Rick Simpson's oil or Charlotte's Web or palmetto oil or something that tells you that it is a full spectrum and not a broad spectrum. Please have that 0.3 of THC in it so you get the entourage effect. What you're buying at the gasoline station is broad spectrum, not full spectrum.
And you believe that 0.3% THC is enough to make that CBD, the entourage effect, work to its utmost effect?
No.
Thank you.
You do need a little bit more.
Thank you.
And that's where getting a certification comes in.
Right.
Now, CBD is still nutritional. CBD is still allowable. I would say you have to walk gently if the teachers are going to know about it, because you don't want DCF coming down on you. And if you're telling everybody that I'm giving my child CBD, it's not going to work. Not yet.
It's still,
wait till the principals start and the superintendents start on CBD. Have quality control. That's what the Cannabis Control Commission is all about. But there's a lot of CBD that doesn't get tested. And, we do what works. And I call it trial and success. And Bonnie Goldstein's book, and you really have to read Bonnie Goldstein's book. She's a pediatrician in California. It's called Cannabis Revealed. It's in its 2nd edition now. And she said the reason that people fail cannabis, meaning either THC or CBD, is they don't give themselves enough time with it and they don't push it enough to higher dosages. And pushing CBD, no problem. 5, 10, 15, 25, even 3 times a day, even for children, not a problem. Pushing THC, again, that's where the American Academy of Pediatrics keeps on saying you're going to damage the brain. But in actuality, the symptomatology of THC issues, meaning memory problems, executive functioning, judgment, coordination. You take a look at all of my teenagers who go to school at 7:15 in the morning. They have the identical profile of somebody using cannabis incorrectly. In other words, they're all sleep deprived. And if we don't get the Board of Education to say, delay school start times, right, it is unconscionable that the bus company has more power than the educational department. Wrong. I mean, Boston passed it and unanimously, and 2,000 parents say you can't do this to us. But you know what? They're doing it to their kids. They want the best education for their kids. Then send the kid to school when he's conscious.
Right.
Because at 7:15 in the morning, adolescents physiologically are unconscious.
Guess what's so sad though, Dr. Ruby, is my daughter has to wake up and get on her Zoom at 7 a.m. So even when they're doing hybrid days in their home, they still have to wake up. So I wish I met you before. I've been in this, and this is what's so unfortunate. And what I don't like about this industry is how hard it is to find the experts. And it took me this long to find you. Like I, to be quite honest, I was a pharmaceutical rep. I knew a lot of pediatricians. I've never met you before. And how that's a challenge that we face. Like how
I don't advertise.
I know you can't, right? Well, no,
I don't want to.
Okay. But I mean, what do we do as parents? Like, it's just hard. How do you find, like, I'm trying to direct people to the best doctors and clinicians, but yeah, like it took a long time to find you.
I volunteered for the Mass chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics to give a lecture to the other pediatricians. They said, we don't want it. There's still stigma. And there's, medicine is called lifelong learning. And a physician who refuses to learn about cannabis, I mean, when I talk to the internist, the family practice people, almost all their patients at one time or another are trying cannabis, and they better understand the interaction of cannabis with the proprietary medications. I mean, when we talk CBD, we are talking interference with liver metabolism. So you really have to know who's on what, particularly when you're treating epilepsy, because you can inadvertently make the AEDs higher than they should be. So you do have to lower things. I haven't seen it, but theoretically, it's certainly possible.
Absolutely.
You just had a
Well,
meeting.
we have 3 minutes, so I don't know.
God, Dr. Ruby, I could talk to you for an hour, but I want to go back to the meeting you just had with your Mass Medical Society, and you had 200 physicians on this. It was a 9.5-hour meeting. I took notes on what you said, and you said they've now taken the word marijuana out of their documentation and have replaced it with cannabis. Are they becoming a little bit more, at least inquisitive about the powers of the plant?
I didn't take a poll, but some of them asked me about it. And I said, the more, see, this is what happens. The patients get smarter than the doctors.
Right.
Because the patients talk to the bud tenders. The patients talk to each other. The patients go online. The patients research their diseases and they research their treatments. Right. And the doctors are too busy. Right. So doctors feel very uncomfortable when their patients know more about their disease and their medicine than the doctor does. So you ask me, are the doctors getting involved? Their answer is, I don't know enough about it. There's not enough research, and I can't recommend it. Right. And that was a poll that was done, and I quoted that one when I gave my testimony, that over 50% of doctors are either unfamiliar or not knowledgeable.
Right. Wow. Wow.
Well, you're going to be busy in your retirement, because I'll help you spread the word if you would be so kind.
Well, I have to write to my office, and the office is 35 Summer Street, 35 Summer in Taunton.
All right.
02780, because that's how I'm doing it right now. I
you got it.
Have to pull things together. And once December 31st rolls around, the new year and new thoughts. Or you can fax me. I do faxes. Faxes are 508-880, 508-880-9897. 508.
I love old school. I love the old school, Dr. Ruby.
I get lost on Zoom. I get lost on email. I'm 120 emails behind half the time.
You're like a natural. This has been a wonderful interview. Like, thank you so much.
And I got to tell you, I'll write you another personal email. Thank you, because I tell you, I have so much respect for what you do, what you continue to do. And the fact that you retired and you're still making yourself available because you recognize that your knowledge can help people and help parents. And I just think that's a wonderful thing. I wish we had more doctors like you, Dr. Eric Ruby.
Well, I told you what my patients call me. You see, Ruby. They call me a gem of a doctor.
A gem of a doctor. I love it. And you don't want to advertise? You don't want to brand that?
But what about your son? I imagine he makes an amazing product, or is that something that, does he have CBD products or that we
He has
can buy?
both.
Okay.
He has both. Right. He's in Connecticut, and you can Yeah, I'm not, he doesn't want me to talk about him, so.
Gotcha. Okay.
Well, you do a great job of balancing what you talk about and what you don't. And again, I give you tons of credit. Thank you so much for coming on today at last moment. And as usual, you have
Tired. I can do the last minute.
I understand, but you said you're even busier now that you're in retirement. You took 9.5 hours on a Saturday to listen to your former comrades. You're still your comrades. So you're not retired. You've just taken a bit of a break, if you will, or
moving into it's a different direction. Let's put it that way. It's
There you
not
go.
direct patient care all the time, but I have a number of interests, and I will pursue them.
There you go. Well, good luck with that. I so appreciate you joining us again. Dr. Eric Ruby from Taunton, Massachusetts, making tremendous impressions on all of us here at Pro Cannabis Media continuing. So thank you for that. Appreciate it. We're going to wrap things up here. And Alyssa, I mean, we had three super interviews, and that's what we'd love to do here on Pro Cannabis Media. We really do want to become a forum for the stories that we're hearing on a regular basis, because they're just not being heard enough by traditional media. That's why I founded Pro Cannabis Media, and that's what will continue. Remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another very special edition of In the Weeds with Jimmy Young. And today we're very proud to be joined by Valerio Romano. He is a very well-respected attorney in the cannabis space, not only here in Massachusetts, but also all the way to the left coast to California, where he went to the University of San Francisco undergrad, and also to their law school. So Valerio, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Jimmy. Happy to be here with you virtually.
There you go. And that's the new normal these days, right? Is that it's just the way everybody does business, I guess. One of the first questions I want to kind of set you up to the fact that you were one of the co-authors of Question 4 in Massachusetts 4 years ago that led to the opening of the adult use legalization of cannabis in the Bay State. Writing a ballot question is a skill unto itself. And I know that in Nebraska, they could have used your strength and reputation and perhaps wordsmith, because they had a ballot question and then was thrown out because of complications, I guess. Explain the challenges of writing a clear and concise ballot question for people to go in and check.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you. We wouldn't have been able to do it in Massachusetts without the Marijuana Policy Project, who's been a nationwide leader on ending cannabis prohibition, really taking the lead. And, you know, they're the fantastic drafters with incredible experience helped us through the process in Mass. But one of the things we learned in Massachusetts, there were many of us in the room when we put this together over the course of about a year, fundraising and otherwise, who really believed in the restorative social justice element to ending cannabis prohibition, and a good cannabis law should address those realities. Unfortunately, in Massachusetts, one of the things that we confronted was the single subject rule for ending cannabis prohibition and drafting a ballot initiative, and that's exactly what happened in Nebraska as well. So, you know, the basics of that law was to give a constitutional right for people with serious medical conditions to medically use cannabis, subject to a recommendation by a physician, cultivate it, produce it. But there are other aspects to the rule, which unfortunately ran afoul of that. Well, the courts at the end decided ran afoul of that single subject rule. And, you know, unfortunately, those aspects were providing access to the cannabis by those that weren't the patients, creating a private right to cultivate it, but also tangential things like smoking cannabis in public, operation of motor vehicles while impaired with cannabis, prohibiting those things. So the court struck down that rule, I think, or that law, and I think, or didn't you actually allow it to get on the ballot? And I think The point here is that prohibitionists will grasp at anything to stop cannabis legalization. And frequently the prohibitionists are not just those with, a moral issue with cannabis or who believe wrongly that it's a gateway drug, but actually people with a financial interest in cannabis prohibition, alcohol lobby, pharmaceutical. And if you look at those who put money into Massachusetts when we were waging our battle, it was alcohol lobby. And so, that's what you'll see. And that's a big problem that happens. So you really have to be attentive and careful when drafting these laws.
And of course, speaking of laws, over the past weekend, the United States House of Representatives on Friday passed the MORE Act. And you mentioned immediately the tie between the legalization of this plant for either medicinal purposes or adult use purposes, but also the expungement of all those records and cannabis arrests and cannabis possession arrests specifically. And one thing that I have learned over the 2 years of doing interviews is this really isn't a drug issue. It truly is a civil rights issue, and the two are intertwined. Do you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And there's people approach this industry, particularly lawyers, from different perspectives, right? So when I started in California, I started out doing criminal defense. And some of the people that, I represented or our office represented, particularly in federal court, didn't have a lot of defense to cannabis use or to cannabis cultivation. And so these are the people that really paved the way for the industry as we know it. And they paved the way with their liberty. We had people who did 10 years for cultivating cannabis, completely nonviolent crimes, no guns around. No allegation that they were selling cannabis to children, or minors. Just merely cultivating cannabis landed them in, 10 years with minimum mandatory. And the social justice and civil rights issue, it's beholden on all of us who represent folks in the industry to represent those people with criminal convictions in cannabis as well, and not just look for the biggest pockets, the deepest pockets to represent, but really, unlike some attorneys who approach this, we really want to make sure that we represent people who pave the way for this industry. And a criminal history in cannabis should not be something that dissuades someone from representing that individual in the industry, because they're the ones who made it possible for all of us.
And I think the stat is well over 511,000 cannabis arrests in the United States in 2019. And about 486,000 violent arrests have nothing to do with cannabis. So the fact that they're still arresting people, especially people of color, for cannabis possession crimes in 2019 still is kind of a really horrific statistic that I know a lot of people are trying the best that they can to change that schedule and also to change the law, even though the MORE Act was symbolic in effect, because we all both recognize that it's not going to get very far, if it even gets to the front door of the US Senate. Was it still worth it to take that vote to send a message to the people that the House of Representatives anyway understands that 68% of Americans want this plant legalized?
Yeah, when almost 70% of Americans, support legalization, even it's the majority of Republicans support legalization. It's really hard to not take that sort of vote in the House of Representatives. But unfortunately, in the House, it was basically on party lines. Just a few people on each side crossed over. People of color are 3 to 4 times more likely to be arrested for a cannabis crime where uses are the same. And so I think it was absolutely critical that the House took that vote. And unfortunately, at the U.S., at the Senate level, we have Republicans like Mitch McConnell and Todd Young who sort of, criticize and sort of laugh at the whole thing. But even Republicans who support, cannabis legalization, like Matt Gaetz from Florida, he sort of poo-poos the social restorative justice elements of the law. So, even though you have support, you don't have the support for the other critical parts of it.
why do people want to still get into the cannabis business right now, Valerio, with all these regulations, all the compliance issues? It's still a Schedule 1 drug as of today. Why are people lining up with their checkbooks trying to get into this business?
Well, I wish more people were lining up with their checkbooks. You know, financing can be the hardest part of the industry, right? Particularly in Massachusetts, financing and acquisition of property for retail can be the hardest part, and local permitting. But, you know, I mean, there's this perception of a green rush, you know, and so there's that idea that there's so much money in it. And unfortunately, cities and towns and also the states have the same perception, right? And so they think there's all this money in it, and anybody's getting in it is going to be flush, until, you know, the federal prohibition on taking regular business deductions, 280E, goes away. There isn't this green rush. There isn't this incredible amount of money, and municipalities and states who have been locking people up for decades for paying their bills with cannabis, as Dave Chappelle said, shouldn't be now paying their bills with cannabis until we get a real change. But some people also are really dedicated to the plant, and they love cultivating it. And this is really important part of their lives. It's, you know, and so there's that aspect to it. I mean, so many growers want to get involved with, in Massachusetts, you call it a tier 1 grow, but, you know, 5,000 square foot or less grow. And they just don't realize how much it's actually going to cost to open at the end of the day, between state, local licensing, building out the grow and compliance with the state regulations, including security. So it's really expensive. But then it's also a really interesting industry as well. I mean, if you know about retail, branding, there's incredible amounts of science involved with it. So for those that want to run a very sort of complex and interesting business that allows them to create these fantastic brands, it also, you know, attracts those folks. And then there's a lot of people who just don't get it either, right? If you ever go to a cannabis convention or meet people who are getting in, they just have no business sense whatsoever. So that's the other reason people get in, because they don't know what they're getting into. And when I speak with new clients, I always tell them it's going to take, 4 times longer and cost 4 times as much to get involved in this industry as they might think. And I think that's critical.
And I think it's also very interesting to point out, because even those of us who may not be the smartest or the sharpest business people and are involved with MRBs, marijuana-related businesses, don't realize that even though you aren't a plant-touching business, if you are still taking cash or any kind of remuneration from those that are in the plant touching side of the business, you're still considered part of the business, and you can't do banking in the United States. That was one of those, I don't know, maybe it's a rite of passage that my company had to go through within the last year, but I do feel like now I've lost my cherry. I'm part of the business. I embrace it, but I do worry about the money grab. I'm worried about how, yes, I recognize how challenging it is to build capital and how many injustices have been and how many barriers to entry there have been for those who've been most affected by the war on drugs. But in a capitalist society, Valerio, money dictates a lot of direction of business and politics. Can cannabis, as we know it, survive?
Oh, absolutely. Well, first of all, on the banking issue, there are some banks, Century Bank in Massachusetts was foremost, but there are others that are jumping on. You don't have the robust suite of banking services, but you have a checking account, you have payroll. The cannabis businesses have access to, for their customers to use debit. So there is some banking, but there isn't the traditional loans that you might get, and there's also this federal tax issue. But I think it absolutely can survive. I mean, there's great momentum at the federal level. We now have a president-elect who may be more willing to move this type of legislation forward. We could see what's going to happen in Georgia. There's a couple really important Senate seats up. And so, I have a lot of faith, and particularly when 280E, that federal prohibition on regular business deductions, Internal Revenue Code Section 280E, when that goes away, which the MORE Act would effectively do, and there are other attempts to do it, safe banking, that would make a huge difference. And I have a lot of faith, and I think that cannabis will survive both for small operators as well as larger multi-state operators.
Yeah, and that's really the follow-up question I had is, can MSOs, multi-state operators, and craft farmers, small mom and pop type operators survive? And is there an equal and level playing field inside each state wherever they both exist?
Well, I can't speak to all states, but Massachusetts and California, where I'm barred, where I'm an attorney, I think they can actually. I mean, ComCan in Massachusetts is a great example. A brother and sister started this business, no multi-state operator affiliation, and they're largely thought of as the best cannabis operator in the state. And so they can survive. And they can actually work together. I mean, multi-state operators have taken a big hit in the last few years with the capital markets falling apart. And so, I mean, you can look at stock prices, and the availability of funds and what the multi-state operators are able to do, particularly in Massachusetts. I think they can survive. But the important thing is to allow them to work together. And so multi-state operators were particularly interested in Massachusetts and infusing capital into the industry. If it costs, a minimum of a few $1 million, call it $5 million to open up, 25,000 square feet of cultivation, and we need, maybe 6 million square feet to actually satisfy the demand, and we probably have 350,000 square feet of operational cultivation today, there's a long way to go, and we need that money to come in. And unfortunately, what happened in Massachusetts is any multi-state operator who tried to invest in the industry was looked at, almost sternly and with a lot of skepticism. And the Boston Globe was beating them up. And I worked with those operators during that time, and I didn't know of one financing or loan agreement where that multi-state operator was trying to take advantage of the smaller business person who was trying to get in the industry. They were all incredibly fair, reasonable, reflected fair market value terms for cannabis contracts. And really, Massachusetts blew it. We had the opportunity for these operators to come in and infuse the hundreds of millions of dollars of capital that we needed, and we chased them out of the state. And I'm hoping that future jurisdictions that come online don't make the same mistake, because that's why there's very few cannabis licenses given to social equity and economic empowerment applicants. There's very few open nationwide. It's like 4% of these businesses. And so we really need to make an effort to allow the multi-state operators who come in with good intentions to invest in this industry. And this is really the shortcoming of all these restorative justice elements of any law. And the MORE Act tried to address it, right? There's this 5% of sales that go into this fund that's supposed to infuse capital into these communities that were disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs. And so we're failing at that in Massachusetts incredibly, despite the lip service that's given to that.
Did the delivery license element and initiative by the Cannabis Control Commission to give a 3-year advantage to social equity applicants for those delivery licenses, is that good enough, Valerio?
No. The delivery licenses in Massachusetts, unfortunately, there's this big scare of the existing licensed operators that the delivery licenses are going to give this incredible advantage to folks who haven't had to go through the hurdles and the work and spend the money. But no, the delivery license in Massachusetts needs to have a brick and mortar. They need to have a warehouse. They need to follow all the security regulations. The cities and towns, in order to site one of these warehouses, typically almost universally, with very few exceptions, have a special permit requirement. You need to hire engineers and architects to apply for your special permit. You need to, provide engineered plans, site plans. You need to hire counsel. There's incredibly, stringent and confusing regulations surrounding the delivery licenses. We're waiting the final version to come out from the Department of Regulations. So you need special permit, property acquisition, security, to open one of these warehouse deliveries, $500,000, $700,000 all day long. It's not this thing where somebody who has, access to 25 grand with them and their brother can get into this industry. It's far, far more than that. And the commission, unfortunately, it's great that they've reduced the license fees for these delivery licenses in their new vote, passing these regulations a few days ago. But unfortunately, it's not nearly enough. What we need is this fund that's going to loan money at maybe even interest-free terms to these operators, so that they can, so they can get involved in the industry. And that's what the MORE Act attempts to do. And that's really, if you want to have this restorative justice approach to the industry, you need to be able to do that, because the delivery licenses, the wholesale delivery license particularly, is not one that's going to allow access to the industry.
In California, the other state that you are licensed to practice law in, recently a lawsuit was brought against, I believe it was the Cannabis Control Commission or the California Board of Cannabis or whatever the heck they call the thing out there. But they took down billboards. They're now not allowing dispensaries or operators to use billboards to push out their messages. I was kind of surprised at this. And then sure enough, when you drive through Massachusetts, you do see billboards. What's your feeling about billboards as really the only traditional media access that the cannabis industry has to a major audience, a lot of eyeballs?
Yeah, sure. So the Bureau of Cannabis Control in California had determined that, billboards would be available as long as they were at least 15 miles from a border. And unfortunately, what they did was the ballot initiative that ended cannabis prohibition in California pretty much expressly prohibited billboards. And the BCC essentially, through regulation, rewrote the ballot initiative. And in California, legislators cannot substantially amend a ballot initiative. The voters' will trumps, period. If you look at what happened in Massachusetts after we passed question 4 in 2016, it was quite the opposite. The legislature completely rewrote the ballot initiative, that the voters had passed. So in Massachusetts, you don't have the same rule. So what happened in California isn't necessarily automatically going to happen in Massachusetts. My thought on billboards is that they're fine. I don't want billboards that, I'm raising 3 boys in Massachusetts, right? I don't want my kids to, be stoners in high school, right? So I don't want billboards for anything, whether it's alcohol, tobacco, cannabis, whatever. I don't want any advertising that, unjustly, glorifies or makes it look cool to use any particular substance. So I think that's the issue with billboards. But in Massachusetts, there's a particular rule in Massachusetts that prohibits advertising on billboards unless at least 85% of the target audience is reasonably expected to be 21 years or over. And can you say that for any billboard? I don't know, right?
No.
Yeah, I think it's hard. I remember in Quincy, there was a billboard that was there was a billboard showing about 25% fewer opioid mortalities is what it talked about, and it cited the law and the study from the American Medical Association, and that billboard was forced to be taken down because neighbors didn't like it. And so I support billboards, I support advertising. I just think that it's important how you do the advertising so as not to make it look cooler to use cannabis for younger people.
And I will say this about younger people, and their job, as you know, is to push up against those barriers that we older people put on them. And that includes our laws, that includes the rules inside your house. It includes all those rules and regulations that kids are always going to push the envelope up against and see what they can get away with. That is the nature of growing up. Mommy and daddy tell you, don't touch that stove, it's hot. You're going to still want to know, what does hot really feel like, right? So you're going to touch the stove quickly just to see. That is the nature of it. As a parent, it is also a great opportunity to talk to your children, not just about cannabis, but about all the adult use products out there and why they're for adults only. Do you see this as an opportunity to do such a thing?
Absolutely. Look, it's up to adults to lock up their drugs, whether it's prescription medication or whether it's cannabis or alcohol. It's up to us to keep those things from being accessible to our kids. And if we can't take that responsibility on our own shoulders, then we're the ones who are failing the kids, not the other way around.
It always comes back to the toughest job any of us ever have or had, which is being a parent, right?
That's right.
Valerio?
But it's also the most rewarding.
That's a great way to wrap this thing up. Valerio Romano, what a pleasure it is to talk with you again. I give you all the luck in the world in your new venture, back out on your own again. You're the boss, right? Your name's on that billboard on the office in Boston. So you still have to clean those toilets if they need to be cleaned, right, Valerio?
Well, everything's virtual these days, but that's right, Jimmy. Thank you very much.
All right. So for Valerio Romano, I'm Jimmy Young. Thanks for watching In the Weeds. Remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.
Now, Weed Talk News and In the Weeds are all available on most major podcast distributors like iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, and our friends at clnsmedia.com and our flagship, cannabis.net. So subscribe, share, and like our videos on all the social media networks out there, including LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, the WeedTube, and YouTube. Weed Talk and In the Weeds are two productions of Pro Cannabis Media supported by Revolutionary Clinics, one of the top medical cannabis dispensaries in the Massachusetts area, now with 3 locations in Greater Boston, 2 in Cambridge and 1 on Broadway in Somerville. Rev Clinics has a patient-first mission. They will customize your needs as a medical patient with the proper titration and combination of strains, flavors, and products. Rev Clinics, where the patient comes first.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.